Hello, everyone, and welcome back. As always, I am your host, Tondro, and we are back again with the leaders of the world as furries. This is part B, so it will be all the nations that start with B. Up first, we have Philip Brave Davis of the Bahamas. Now, I have been to the Bahamas, and I personally can attest that it is quite the tropical paradise, but it is by no means a perfect paradise. Like most good tropical nations, there's politics, there's intrigue, there is people who are trying to make ends meet. And Philip started out, as you can see in the screen cap of his Wikipedia page, started out as a construction worker. So he is someone who had to work with his hands. Now, when it comes to furries who work specifically in construction, I have only ever seen two personas that have every civil engineer, every construction worker. They've only had maybe 2 to 3 personas. They've always been skunks, they have always been bears, and they have always been boar for whatever reason. Now, the boar in many cultures, I can't speak about the Bahamas, but the boar is a very noble creature in my opinion. And again, the vast majority of people who work in construction are boars. So we're going to go with a boar. Next, we have, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, Hamad bin Isa al Khalifa. I am probably fucking that up, but hey, points where it counts, right? Now, he is the current king of Bahrain and has been ruling, as you can see here, since 2002. And Bahrain is a monarchy in the Middle East. It is a small time nation that is about the size of like Rhode Island or something. And well, unlike Saudi Arabia, they didn't invest all of their money into oil, but rather into IT and banking. So I guess they're smart about that. Now, I racked my brain, a big one on this, so I decided to play it safe and look at the culture and the history of the place, and I decided to make Hamad the national animal of Bahrain, the oryx, which is kind of like an antelope if it's found in the desert. Insofar as people who have this persona, usually they are people who are pretty out of the box thinkers, and I think that characterizes Bahrain and their current domestic policies. Next, we have Muhammad Shahabuddin. I'm probably messing that up again. A jurist, civil servant, and politician, and leader currently of Bangladesh. Now, when it comes to Bangladesh, I think of a very badass people who have a long storied history of fighting off the British. And this guy has been around since about the end of the Raj, and he seems as somewhat and he has a master's in psychology. So every very rare is it that there is a psychologist furry, even more so when they are not white. But I've noticed that the most badass people you don't want to mess with, but are also the kindest people, are always people who have the cobra persona or some lizard persona of some kind. And this is not saying that Muhammad is a bad guy or anything. This is me saying he is pretty cool. He is level headed, but is willing to do whatever it takes to do the right thing. And of course, psychologist. And for whatever reason, all of the smart psychologist furries I've ever met have also had reptilian personas as well. So I decided to go with the cobra, which is quite quite deeply connected with India, Bangladesh, and that region of the world. I found it quite fitting. Up next, we have Sandra Mason, a a diplomat, lawyer, politician, and the current president of, well, the first president too of Barbados, which recently had a referendum where they succeeded from the crown and became a full-fledged republic. Now, she has won the Order of Freedom, and she is served on the chair of CARICOM, and if I remember correctly, she has several other major accolades that basically point to her being an all-around good person. She has a heart of gold, essentially. She is a well-known philanthropist in some regards as well. So I am going to go with who is who are the nicest people at every furry convention, sans foxes and bears. Well, the otters. So we're gonna go with an otter for this one. That and island nation surrounded by water just makes sense. Up next we have Alexander Lukashenko. Boy, do I have a lot to say about this gentleman. Now, when it comes to Lukashenko, I personally don't like the guy. He has been in power for pretty much since the fall of the Soviet Union, served in the Soviet army. He pretends to be a farmer, but is really just part of the bourgeoisie. He and his fellow plutocrats and strongmen and yes men that spearhead his regime. He is basically a fascist with a red coat of paint, and he's just all around a villain. He is every last edgelord made into a Eastern Bloc dictator. So, what better way to make him a furry than with the most edgelord of all fursonas, the wolf, specifically a black wolf with red eyes. So that's what I think of him in his civilian dictatorship. Next up, we have Alexander De Croo, who is the Prime Minister of Belgium. Now, I don't know too much about Belgian politics, but he is he's like a right winger of that's his politics. He's in the right wing party, or a party that's described as being center right, and he is, fun fact, a pretty well known equestrianist. He works a lot with horses, and so naturally, I have made his persona a horse. And and I've noticed a lot of just right-wingers in general, if they have a persona, they will often be horses and goats for some reason. Up next, we have Johnny Beresenio. Beresenio is the current politician of Belize. He seems like just a genuinely swell guy. I've tried to dig up as much dirt on him as possible. Didn't find any. He is the current leader of the PUP, or PUP, or the People's United Party, which is the center-left party that is currently in control of Belize. And his brother kind of spearheaded connecting the country with telecommunications like radio, TV, etc. All in all, heart of gold on this guy as well. And the nicest furries, apart from the otters, are often also the dog furries. Specifically, anyone with a golden retriever persona, heart of gold. Golden heart, golden retrievers, let me tell you that. And, the name of his political party is PUP. Like, come on, I had to. Next, we have Patrice Talon. Now, Talon, or Talon as I'll call him, is the president of Benin. He's been the president of Benin since 2016. And there's a lot of there's a lot of interesting stuff about him. Like, he went to the University of Dakar, got a C grade has a bachelor's degree in science, but the fact that it's a C is interesting. And allegedly he at some point maybe was a pilot. We don't know. He's also the richest person, one of the richest people in like the world and on the continent of Africa. He's been known as the king of cotton, and well, let's just say when we think of the sleazy, white collar criminal who rules a small African nation, this is probably who you're thinking of. I'm not saying he is corrupt. I'm just saying a lot of people point to him and say he's corrupted. He's corrupt. He's problematic. Blah blah blah. And on top of all that, the U.S. State Department says that he's been embezzling. Like I think you can actually see it in the screen cap. He's embezzling 18 million euros in taxes, and not only that, he just genuinely just bad vibes all around. Very very selfish and evil allegedly. So with that, we're gonna make him a Sergal because every fucking Sergal I have ever met has been problematic in some way, shape, or form. Normally they're racist, but this time around we're just gonna say corrupt politician, plutocrat who just steals money and sits on a giant pile of gold all day like a dragon. A Sergal. Next up, we have Jingmei Khasar Namgil Wangchuk. I'll just call him Wang. He is the current monarch of the Kingdom of Bhutan. The Kingdom of Bhutan is considered a semi-constitutional monarchy. He holds the power, not he holds way more power than the prime minister. Now he is American educated, like many foreign leaders, and I think that's the main reason why the U.S. is a massive global power, is because a lot of the world leaders are educated in the U.S. and then come back abroad. But he seems like a genuinely level-headed person, and while he has massive authority, he is willing to use it at least in the right way. And he does not strike me as necessarily the most progressive on all things. Like I don't see him as like a like pro LGBTQ or like hey, we need to stop this war or that war kind of person. He seems like someone who wants to just look out for Bhutan and Bhutan alone, and I'm okay with that. But so he's like probably like center right of some kind. After all, he is a monarch. So I decided to give him a goat because we had a dragon last episode anyway. And I would imagine that the goat it could be seen as a symbol of wisdom, at least to some people. To me, they are. Next up, we have Louise Arce. I call them Arce, and or Arce. I'm supposed to call him Arce. Wow, that's an unfortunate surname. So he's left of center. He was couped, survived his coup, in blah 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 social unrest, in a snap election, etc. etc. He saw massive success for eradicating, or at the very least getting vaccines from the Russian and Chinese sources to the people of Bolivia. And he is a comrade socialist. And he's from the University of Warwick as well. So there's that. So when I think of all this and how badass he is to have made it this far and accomplished so much with such little time politically, I will give him the prestigious persona that only other badass furries can have. The jaguar. That and jaguars are native to Bolivia. So there you go. Up next we have Dennis. I am not going to bother pronouncing that surname because it has too many accent marks. And he is the current leader of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And he is, of course, the current vice president of the Social Democratic Party. Now, he seems pretty level-headed. He doesn't seem to have any corruption problems. He hasn't come out in favor of like butchering people alive or whatever. He seems like a genuinely cool dude to hang out with, and someone who wants to help his society and his country flourish. And I genuinely have a rule against putting two of the same persona in the same video, but everything about him just screams Otter, so we're gonna have to go with Otter. Sorry. Next up, we have, I can't pronounce your first name, Masisi. And Masisi is the current leader of Botswana. He's had quite a bit of a controversial presidency due to allegations of electoral fraud and the allegedly bad and abysmal response to COVID-19 pandemic and blah, 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 blah. And he doesn't strike me as a bad guy. He strikes me as a right-winger who kind of sees himself as a king. And what better way to encapsulize a right-winger from Africa than with the horse of Africa, the zebra. Next up, we have one of my favorites, Da Silva. Good old Lula da Silva, or just Lula. He's a trade unionist, led worker strikes during the military dictatorship of Brazil back in the 80s. He managed to defeat Bolsonaro. Is a leftist, and is very environmentally conscious of things like that. And I decided, since I already gave out a jaguar today, I'm going to make him a similar badass animal that is often slept on, and that is the caiman, which are native to the Amazon River. Now, this guy, Hassanal Bolkiah, is the Sultan, Prime Minister, King for Life of Brunei. Now, he is essentially just, imagine Indonesian Hitler. He's Indonesian Hitler. He vanishes people. He's extremely anti-gay, very conservative Muslim. He's basically like the Saudi prince with more power, more or less. And all he does is collect his tax money from his people and use it to buy fancy cars and whatnot. All he does is consume. He is everything bad about the rich personified, and I can think of no persona to give him to encapsulate that more than a pig, which I know is probably very sacrilegious to the Muslims in the audience, but if anyone deserves to be turned into a haram animal, it's this guy. Next up, we have Rumen Radev, who is the leader of Bulgaria. And Bulgaria is an all-right country. It's joined the EU, and surprisingly, Radev is a socialist and served as the high commander of their nation's air force. So we are dealing with someone who is particularly smart and particularly brave, because I'll be damned if I go up in the air. Now, he is very, he's a very strong masculine character and whatnot as well. So I figured, hey, you know what? He's a man of combat and action, and there's not a lot of bovines represented within Air Force spaces, within furries in the military. So I decided I would make him a I would make him a bison. I would make him a bison, and there's a lot of bison in Eastern Europe as well. Now, next we have Ibrahim Traore. Now, Traore is the military dictator of who established himself in like a coup. Um, he is maybe a Marxist. We don't know. He's the current leader of Burkina Faso, and he did work for MINUSMA, a United Nations peacekeeping org. I think he is genuinely he is genuinely trying to figure out the jihadist insurgency situation in his country, and he is doing his best to not become another dictator in Africa. But I don't really know if he can survive. But I do know this: if I was a terrorist in his country, I would be very fucking scared. And so I decided to make him the scariest animal in Africa, the African wild dog. That, and you got to admit, he does look pretty good in that uniform. Now, next up, we have this guy who is the president of Burundi. I am not even going to bother pronouncing his name, but he is a fervent Catholic, and he was studying law in the University of Burundi during the genocide. And he fled the violence and joined with the moderate rebel group. So we know that he is a moderate. Some people believe that he is a little bit more radical as he's gotten older. Some people believe that he is also a puppet for the former guy who is basically a dictator, Pierre, whatever the hell. And genuinely, he is someone who is a bit ambiguous, and ambiguity in your goals and motives in the furry community is very rare. But the most ambiguous fursona I could think of was someone who has the duality of being good and providing for people, much like this gentleman is providing for his nation. However, he can cause drama and bring, peck your eyes out if need be. So I decided to make him an avian. But something not as bold as an eagle, because Burundi is a very, very tiny and microscopic country that no one thinks about. So I decided to go with a humble avian. May I introduce you to the chicken fursona? Specifically, he is a rooster. Now, with all that said, this is where we part ways. I will see you in part C. Have a great time.